Hi guys, so today we're going to talk about increasing your net worth as quickly as possible. So what I'm going to do is firstly talk you through how I went from essentially a negative 30,000 net worth to a over 100,000 net worth now at 29 years old. Once I've taken you through my steps of what I did and what I think are the most important elements, I'm going to have a chat with Ryan from Making Money Simple and see how he managed to increase his net worth as well. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump straight in. And for me, the first step that I took was refinancing my debt. So if you do have debt, obviously if you don't, this isn't relevant to you, but I do think the majority of people do have some sort of debt. And what you have to remember is that you're not just stuck with the debt that you took out. There are ways of refinancing. So you could take out 0% credit cards. You could consolidate all your credit cards or loans or both into one bigger loan with a lower interest rate. Now, the interest rate here is key because the lower the interest that you're paying, the more of the money that you're paying towards your debt will go towards the principal balance, so towards paying off the actual debt. Some of these may seem like very obvious baby steps, but there are people out there who aren't aware of them, so it's important to highlight them. Now, the second step is to start budgeting properly. And a lot of people seem to think that budgeting just restricts you and tells you exactly how much you can spend and things like that. But you can be flexible in your budget. So I update my budgeting spreadsheet all the time. And there are months when I go over budget on something, and there are months when I go under budget on something. And I just flex it. But the key is to know what you're spending and how much you can flex towards your debt or your goals. There are so many different spreadsheets out there, but the key is to just know and be aware of how much you've got going out and therefore how much is discretionary spend. Budgeting properly is so underrated, and I think not enough people do it. So if you don't already do it, make sure you start. Now, the third thing is to make sure you pay off higher interest debt first. So again, you'll then minimize that interest amount you're paying. So if you aren't able to consolidate at all, or if you can only consolidate some of it, prioritize the higher interest debts first. The fourth thing is obviously decreasing your expenses. So any bit of money that you're not spending is money that you can throw at either your investments or your debt, depending on which stage of the journey you're at. But obviously net worth is your assets minus your liabilities, right? So decreasing those liabilities is key. Now, for me, the fifth step that I took was purchasing a property. Now, for me, the property was shared ownership, so I didn't buy 100% of the property, but even with something like shared ownership, you can still make money on the sale. So for me, I sold after 2 years, and that wasn't my plan originally, so I actually didn't make as much money as I could have. But firstly, rather than paying rent and throwing all my money away, I was building up some sort of equity in my property, which I then got back, which obviously you don't with rent. But I also made a profit on the sale, even after selling costs. So I really tried to minimize my selling costs. And like I said, it wasn't a huge profit, but it was something. Now, had I kept my flat rather, for a longer time, I would have made more money, but I sold it to move back to Poland. The sixth one is side hustles. So I am a huge believer in the fact that everyone can have at least one side hustle, no matter what your situation is. Even if it only makes you £50 a month, that is still £50 a month that you can throw at things like investments. It is a sacrifice and you have to be willing to do it, but if you really want to, you can. The seventh step for me was to start investing. So this is the best way of growing your money, growing your net worth. If you put money in a savings account, then you're going to get, I think at the moment, the best interest account I've got is 0.6%, which is so much less than inflation. And we know that inflation is like over 4% right now. So unless you're investing your money is losing value. My investments have grown so much since I started investing 2 years ago now, and I'm so pleased that I did it. Honestly, you don't have to pick stocks and be an expert. You can literally just invest in index funds and your money will still usually grow above inflation. The 8th step for me, which may or may not apply to you, was actually overpaying the mortgage. So this is only a small thing. I only overpaid it by, I think, like £50 a month. But it was still within my allowable amounts that I could overpay and therefore decrease my interest. And finally, the 9th step for me was actually starting pension contributions. So for a long time, I actually didn't have a pension. I wanted to focus on paying off student loans, paying off my debt and everything like that. And that was a personal decision. I know that by doing that, I was sort of foregoing a lot of money that my employer would have put into my pension. However, I have all sorts of personal views on that, and it was my own decision. It is not always the right one, and most people will be better off investing in their pension from an early age. But currently I'm putting in £50 a month into my pension and my employer is putting in £450. So every month my pension grows by at least £500, and that's not including the returns on the actual investments. So those were my steps that I took to go from a minus 30k net worth to a plus 110k net worth. Now let's have a chat with Ryan.
Hello, I am Ryan, I'm 24 years old and I'm very honoured to be featuring on Anna's YouTube video talking about net worth and hopefully sharing some good tips and tricks on how you can build your own net worth up over time like I've been doing myself over the last few years. If you don't know who I am, I run a financial education platform called Making Money Simple, which was set up in 2019. And at this point, I'm pretty much across every social media, including YouTube. The main aim of the platform is to break down personal finance and investing simply so people understand it without any jargon. And the main aim really of the platform is to actually get people investing. But this video today is going to be about net worth, and really investing plays a big part in building your net worth up over time, and really how I got my net worth to where it is today is ultimately through investing. So in terms of my own net worth story, 4 years ago I did not have a single penny invested when I was 20 years old. Now today I'm 24 years old, I'm working full-time in London, and I actually recently just passed £50,000 in investments. Everyone always says the first 100k is the hardest, so now I'm halfway there to that 100k investment portfolio. That is my total investment, so my ISAs, my pensions, crypto, everything. So in terms of a bit about my story and how I got from 0 to 50k in 4 years, as I mentioned, 4 years ago I had absolutely £0 invested. I then worked for a year in London in between my second and third year of uni, and I got auto-enrolled into my workplace pension. So fast forward a year after I finished that placement year, I then had only about £1,000 invested, and that was all in my workplace pension. It was then soon after that that I actually started taking a big interest in personal finance and investing. I opened up my stocks and shares ISA with Vanguard and started investing consistently into that. I originally started with the lowest amount possible, which was £100 per month, and essentially with a few other investments. After that second year being an investor, I then had about 5k invested. At this point, I had some in my workplace pension, some in my stocks and shares ISA, and also a few random individual stocks that I invested into. Fast forward another year, and this is now roughly August 2020, I then got to 17k invested. The main reason being for that was because I actually finished my degree in the summer of 2019, so by the time it got to August 2020, I'd pretty much been investing back into my workplace pension, taking advantage of that employer match for a whole year. I'd also still been contributing to my stocks and shares ISA, and actually upped my contributions. I think at the time it was around £200, £250 per month. Then ultimately, by the time I got to August 2020, I had 17k invested. By the time I then got another year, August 2020, I had 35k invested. And that, once again, all the exact same stuff. I was still contributing monthly to my workplace pension. I was still contributing to my stocks and shares ISA, and was upping my contributions as my salary increased, as well as investing in any bonuses. By that point as well, in about May 2020 was when I also started investing pretty much weekly or bi-weekly into crypto, and all of those things I mentioned I still do today. Plus there was once again some individual stocks that I had randomly at the time, and that all totaled to about £35,000 as of August 2021. As of today, now recording this in November 2021, my total investment portfolio is now £50,000. And it's going to be boring saying this, but all the exact same things again. The workplace pension, contributing every month automatically, taking advantage of my employer match. The stocks and shares ISA, I've been investing into that automatically now for 3 years, increasing my contributions over time. Crypto investments, and actually at this point I pretty much now have no individual stocks. Most of my money is spread across between my workplace pension, my stocks and shares ISA, and some crypto. And as I mentioned, as of November 2021, my total investment pot is £50,000. So that's my story of how I got from 0 to 50k over 4 years. But hopefully, ultimately it shows that I didn't really do anything special. I literally took advantage of my workplace pension, took action and started investing for a stocks and shares ISA, read a few books on cryptocurrency, believed in it and started investing, continued upping my investments as my salary increased, as I made side hustle income, as I got bonuses, and now 4 years later that's all together to give me a £50,000 investment portfolio. If I had to give one piece of advice in terms of net worth, I would simply say just track your net worth, because once you do it, it's very eye-opening. So when I say track your net worth, I mean get all of your assets, all of your liabilities, minus your liabilities from your assets, and that gives you your net worth. But by tracking it, it's really going to be eye-opening. How I mind set up, I essentially have all of my bank accounts, my workplace pensions, my ISAs, all of my assets possible that I can think of. I list them all, so I get a clear snapshot of where all of my money essentially is, if it's in investments, if it's in savings, if it's in my current account. I then list all of my liabilities, and then that once again gives me a good snapshot of where I owe money to. Then assets minus liabilities gives me my net worth. I personally update that sort of list once per month, so then over time I can see how my net worth is actually changing and hopefully growing over time as I'm increasing my assets and reducing my liabilities. But that is the one piece of advice I would say when it comes to net worth, is just start tracking it, because you're going to get a great snapshot of where all your money is, whether assets or liabilities, and also hopefully as you see your net worth growing over time, it'll give you more motivation to want to invest more, reduce your liabilities. I know it certainly has for me. I think the main thing that stopped me from getting where I was to where I am now is just not starting earlier. I know I started at 20, so that's still pretty young. And I know everyone always says they wish they started earlier, but I've pretty much been working part-time jobs all throughout my teenage years. So I do sometimes imagine if I started investing at 18, opened up a stocks and shares ISA, I could even maybe right now have a 60, 70k plus pot. No one obviously knows, but one thing I wish that I did was start earlier. As soon as I turned 18, open up a stocks and shares ISA, even £100 a month, because that money now would have already been compounded for 6 years and give me a good return. So if you haven't started, just get started today, because trust me, once you've been investing for 5-10 years, you're going to wish you had started 5-10 years earlier, no matter what age you are. For anyone in debt, my advice would be, similar to sort of my tip about tracking your net worth, would be to list all of your debts. A lot of people have money all over the place, debts all over the place, they don't know what interest rate they're paying on them, they don't know how much they owe. I would say open up a simple spreadsheet, list out your debts, list out how much you owe and who it is to, and also list out the interest rate for each debt. That's going to give you a great snapshot of, I guess, all the liabilities, all the money that you owe, and then you can then hopefully start attacking that debt one by one. Two main methods you may have heard when it comes to actually paying down your debt: the snowball method and the avalanche method. The snowball method is when you pay off the smallest debt first and you essentially build up a snowball. The avalanche method is when you pay the highest interest debt first. The best choice for you between the snowball method and the avalanche method is going to be personal preference and dependent on your personality. But if it was me personally, because I'm fairly rational, I like to think, I would use the avalanche method, because that means by attacking the highest interest debt first, I'll essentially be paying low interest over time as I pay off those debts. But obviously the big thing is, when it comes to debt especially, don't bury your head under the sand. List all those debts out, how much you owe, who to, what interest rate, get that snapshot, and then you can start attacking them one by one and paying them off. So finally, in terms of giving 3 tips in terms of how you can grow your net worth quickly, I would say increase your income, start a side hustle, avoid debt. Increase income is the biggest and most important one by a mile. Just imagine right now, if your income doubled, how much more you could invest per month and how much more you could contribute and then grow your net worth over time. So income is the biggest factor in my opinion. Expenses, obviously lowering your expenses is good. If you can lower your expenses, you can maybe free up a bit more money per month to pay off debt or invest. But ultimately, you can only reduce your expenses so far. If you can increase your income by a few £1,000s, imagine you could double it over the next 5 years. You can then grow your net worth at a much quicker rate over time. The second thing would be to start a side hustle or really just start other income streams. This once again is going down a similar line where if you can create other income streams, whether it's through a side hustle like mine is Making Money Simple, which I've now monetized, or through flipping products or selling products or e-commerce, whatever it is, if you can start a side hustle, make some money from it, that once again is going to increase your income, and then you can put more into investments and assets and grow your net worth quicker over time. The third and final thing would be to avoid debt. And I'm talking here really about sort of high interest consumer debt like payday loans. Debt is going to weigh you down. It's something you've got to pay every single month, so it reduces money that could be used for other things. Also, as we mentioned, net worth is assets minus liabilities. So if you're taking on more debt, increasing your liabilities, that's going to decrease your net worth over time. So I'd say avoid debt. And that is where I'm going to wrap this video up. Thank you once again to Anna for having me on her channel. I really appreciate it. If you do want to check out my channel, it's Making Money Simple. These are all of my sort of tips, tricks, hints when it comes to net worth, and also a bit about my story of how I grew mine over the last 4 years, which I hope has been helpful. And yeah, thank you very much for watching.
Thanks so much for coming onto the channel, Ryan. That was really, really useful. Hopefully you guys found it useful as well. Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to check out Ryan's channel, and good luck. I will see you in the next video.